What up, gang? It's your boy. Happy Monday. This is your Week 6 recap. I'm on a 2-game lose streak, so I'm a little bit melancholy at the moment. Biggest word I know, but I'm gonna try to touch a couple other topics in the league here, but I'll just kind of cruise through these matchups that we just saw. We had 3 pretty notable matchups. One being mine with Wet Boy Nation. Came down to, if I remember correctly, it was Alvarado versus Fears last night to round out the matchup. But final score 14-34, 14-15. Looks like Jeremiah Fears had a much better night than my guy Alvarado, outscoring him by 20. I lost by 19. So that's a lot of fun to watch a game like that. Of course, maybe Keontae George could have showed out, and even if he would have had a bum game, like 20 points, that would have won for me, but it's fine. We'll let Wet Boy advance to 4-2 here, shake up this leaderboard. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but that could be a contender for matchup of the week, being 14-34 to 14-15. Daniel Velasquez wins his 3rd matchup in a row this week against Kobe Wan Ginobili, who is now our only winless team in the league. Daniel wins 14-40 to 11-91. We see his top performer at Denny Abdiha. He had a monster night on Sunday, 105 points. Austin Reeves is 2nd highest. Devin Booker 3rd highest. Some pretty big names there. Josh Hart was Jesse's highest performer there, averaging probably north of 60 points for the week. 242 points in 4 games. That'd be 60-some points. Kawhi Leonard is 2nd highest performer with 138. Daniel's team is fairly formidable. Another guy to keep your eye on as he's going to move up the leaderboard here. We'll talk about that in a minute. And what I do think was the matchup of the week, we had Connor For Real narrowly beating Cooper Flaggett, 1648 to 1647. That came down to a stat correction, which would be our, I don't know, it seems like 3rd week in a row that one of the matchups came down to a stat correction. So I'll talk a little bit about those here in a minute. But in this matchup, we saw Anthony Edwards be Connor's highest performer on the week with 241 points. That's just over 60 points a game. Jaylen Brown is number 2 at 229. Scotty Barnes, the highest performer for Cooper Flaggett at 224, and Pascal Siakam at 189. Finally saw a big game from Cooper Flag, only 61 fantasy points, but he may have arrived. Something to monitor there for Grimes' team. He had a pretty good pickup on Reed Shepherd there. I thought he played the wire well this week, but not good enough, as Connor For Real is going to pick up his... Oh, come here. Come on. Out of there. Come here. Sorry. The snoring machine's over here. Big snoring dog. All right. So, yes, better luck. Better luck next time for Grimes. Pretty tough team to be looking at 2-4, but that's where he's at. 2-4. Lost another one this week. Close one to Connor For Real, picking up his 1st win of the year. Clash of the Titans there in Eric and Dakota. Both these teams were undefeated going into this week. Dakota wins 1964 to 1691. It's a 300-point victory on a 500-point Friday night. 557 points from Dakota was pretty insane. Dakota used all 6 of his acquisitions. He played the wire pretty well this week. This was a fun matchup to watch, but it was over after the Friday night blowout. So Dakota remains undefeated. He's our only undefeated team in the league right now. 6 in a row, back to back is Dak. 1964, 1691. We saw Bronze Retirement Fund outplay Team Velasquez, 1506 to 1282. Luka, 262 points in this matchup. CJ's highest third highest performer was a guy he scooped up off the wire, and Colin Gillespie in Phoenix. That's kind of interesting to see a wire guy be that high up. Always love that. CJ's team is now 3-3 as Jorge's team falls to 2-4, lost 2 in a row. Second highest losing streak is on Ben Bowen, who just lost again this week to Chanks Chuchos. Chance is now 3-3. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Nikola Jokic, two fantasy monsters go head-to-head in this matchup this week, but not enough action from Jokic for Ben's team here, as we see Chance get the edge. Ben might be figuring this out. He's got some weapons coming back. He's got Jalen Williams back now, Kobe White, Tyler Hero all out of his IR. So maybe we'll see Ben put some points up this week, and might show up as a bit more of a bit tougher than he's looked the first 6 weeks of this year. But we'll monitor that. Matchup of the week, I would think, would probably be the one that came down to a stat correction, which again, I'm going to kind of touch base here in a second on what those really look like. So I'm probably going to give matchup of the week to Connor For Real versus Cooper Flaggett. If not, Senguns and back-to-back-to-back. That was a very exciting matchup for the first half of this week. Most of the week, this was a close matchup to monitor. Eric had a huge edge in the beginning of the week. Dakota fought his way back. Honestly, it's hard not to give that matchup of the week as far as one that would have been more fun to watch. Connor just barely clawed his way back into this one over the weekend. But I'm going to go matchup of the week, back-to-back-to-back versus Senguns. That was a pretty big matchup this week. Guys are sparks are flying in the chat as they talking about each other. Eric trying all the Fade God tricks to get Dakota down. He couldn't get it done. So, loses by 300 points. That's a tough loss for Eric, but we'll see what motivation this brings for the next few weeks after a loss like that. Sometimes light a fire under your ass. So matchup of the week, Senguns back-to-back-to-back. I've got manager of the week. I'll go Dakota with back-to-back-to-back. I think that's his first manager of the week award. But your curveball here is team of the week. I think I'm going to go Connor For Real. Connor's team was the third highest scoring team. Wins in a close matchup. He only used 2 acquisitions to do it this week. Picked up D'Angelo Russell for a 1-point performance. He's got De'Aaron Fox back. His team's still pretty hurt. He's got more weapons that he could throw at us soon. Fought around injuries, but he's got some pieces back. Gets his first win, third highest scoring team. He would have beat anybody else outside of the Senguns back-to-back-to-back matchup. And it wouldn't have been close against anybody other than Grimes. So, team of the week, we're going Connor For Real. Manager of the week, we're going Dakota. Matchup of the week, back-to-back-to-back versus Senguns. Bozo of the week, I'm inclined to talk about Jesse again. I don't know that Jesse really stood a chance here. His team's pretty hurt, but it didn't seem like he loaded up when he could. He only used 1 acquisition. He's not really applying himself out here. He left a bunch of points on the bench on Friday night. You see Nemhard was out that night. Porzingis was out that night, but he's got 42 from Suggs, 28 from Hunter on the bench. Could have been some mismanagement. Anybody else sticking out as Bozo of the week is not. I don't see anybody else making a big enough mistake to have cost them the matchup. Ben's still figuring it out. Played the wire fairly well. Guess Chance won, but he left a guy in IR, which we'll probably talk about that here in a second too. Yeah, Ben left some big points on the bench this week. and left enough points on the bench to make this a much closer matchup. And he actually didn't make any acquisitions to contend in this matchup. He still has LaRavia rostered. He's still using John Collins. He's still got Max Christie on this team. I'm going to go Bozo of the Week is Ben. Jesse, you lucked out not to get it this week. But Bozo of the Week, I'm going Jennifer Bowen. There he is. All right, here we go. Player of the Week is probably... could be Anthony Edwards at 241 in a very close matchup. Could be Cade Cunningham at 268. I think that's probably who should get it. Cade Cunningham, very, very strong week there in a close matchup. He made a big difference. Luka, 262. I'm going to go Cade Cunningham for Wet Boy Nation as Player of the Week. 268 points. That is the highest performer on the week. And a close matchup where 19-point difference, you needed every little point you could get from everybody. And Cade had some strong showings this week. So congratulations, Wet Boy, another player management award there. Just to kind of talk a little bit about IR slots, acquisitions, how that all works, and like the timing of that. One thing I'm always looking at are what time do the games start today? Before any moves, before I'm making any moves, or as I'm strategizing moves, I try to make sure I know the first game. Even if I don't have players playing in that game, I just need to know when games start. Because if it's a 5 o'clock tip-off, if it's a 3 o'clock tip-off game, that's when the first game tips off is going to lock your roster moves for the day. Roster moves that will get locked are ones that are additions or subtractions from your team. They are not moves to and from the bench, but they are moves that anything that involves a player being released, dropped, or a player being acquired, added, claimed, any of that is shut off after the first tip-off. So what this means is you have a guy in IR and your roster is full and games tipped off at 3 o'clock on Sunday, and all of a sudden your guy at 7 o'clock is cleared to play, but you don't have a spot open on your roster. You've got everybody's full to the point to activate the guy from IR. Let's say you have to drop somebody to activate this guy into your team. You won't be able to do that. That drop won't take place until the games are finished the next day. That won't officially set for your roster until games are concluded for that day. Since your roster was locked, you would be stuck with that guy in your IR slot, as we saw that happen to a couple teams this week. However, if you have a guy in your IR and you have an open slot on your roster, which means you could activate this guy from IR without having to drop anybody, you would legally be able to do that after games start. So if you're in one of these positions where you can afford to do this, if you've got a guy, a hitter in your IR, and he's questionable or maybe he's going to play, if you have the inclination that he's going to play, maybe you drop a player before games start so that you have the workability about that if he does get announced that he's going to be in, you can activate him from IR. If it doesn't mean if you're not dropping anybody to do so, you would be able to move him from your IR slot onto your bench, and then from your bench onto your starting team. You can make moves from your bench to your starting lineup at any point during the night, as long as that game hasn't started, and it doesn't need an add or a drop. So if you're looking at Jesse's team on Friday night, he had 2 guys that were out, 2 guys that were in. As soon as he knew that Porzingis was out, he could have been able to slide one of those guys in from his bench into that position, although games had started from the day, because it doesn't need a drop or an add for him to do that. IR, again, works different because a lot of times you're picking a guy up when you put somebody on IR. That's a smart way to do it. But in order to pull him out of IR, you'll have to drop somebody, which means you'd have to do that before games started for him to be in your available rosters. You can ask me any direct questions about that, and I can explain it better. A lot of that kind of does boil down. It seems like it boils down to very specific kind of scenarios, but it's not as specific as you might feel. But I can always explain that to you when we're looking at it, or if you wake up one day and you're wondering about what you're going to do that evening, you can always text me and I'll clarify some of that stuff and make it make more sense for you guys. The other thing I've been hearing questions about is these stat corrections. Everybody's goofing off that I'm doing them. If I were to adjust any stats myself, it would show in the activity log that the league manager made the stat correction. It would always be noted that that's something that I did versus that actually happened. There is a list of stat corrections under, I think it is under recent activity. You can go to, well, recent activity is where you would see, I'm sorry, I'm not finding the stat correction sheet right now, just like in the moment. Okay, it's under league info tab, and then you'll go up here to stat corrections. This takes a week to update this list. You can see stat corrections for each individual day, but this list won't be current all the way. This is actually from last, my God, so sorry guys. This is actually from last week here. This is an example of a stat correction. Shoot. This is about Trendon Watford on last Sunday. This is an example of what it looks like. So ESPN and the league will constantly update stats. A lot of them will boil down to rebounds, steals, sometimes blocks. Unfortunately, blocks and steals are worth 4 points each, and those tend to be the biggest things to make moves amongst these matchups. They're the biggest stat to be updated individually. For our league, offensive rebounds are also important because they'll be 2 points. You don't usually see a stat correction on points or free throws or anything that's very straightforward. A lot of times the stat correction will be, they notice, so-and-so got credited with a steal, but actually it was this guy that poked the ball loose, so he should get the steal, or this guy just lost the ball. It didn't have anything to do with the guy that got credited for the steal. It was really more of the ball handler just turning it over. So sometimes they'll get rid of a steal out of that column, or they'll add a steal. Same thing with a block. Sometimes it will be deemed that there was a block, somebody else got credited with a block when the defender didn't have possession of the ball, or some sort of shot wasn't. Some blocks are a little bit more straightforward than steals and offensive rebounds. Rebounds in the NBA, if I were to go up and tip the ball to another player on offense, if I punch the ball out and somebody out here on the 3-point line caught the rebound, I should be credited for that rebound because of the tip out. So sometimes they'll review and find, oh, so-and-so actually this guy should be credited with, oh man, come on, look out, look, come here. Sometimes they'll say the wrong guy was credited with the rebound, or should have been credited with the rebound, things like that. So offensive rebounds would be big pivotal sort of updates because you're credited for 1 point for the rebound and 1 point for the offensive rebound, so that's 2. That you could be either earned or lost. At the same time, steals are 4. Steals could be big ones. So stat corrections are the league's doing. They are generally updated within a week, but how that plays, they're generally updated within minutes, but they can be updated up to a week later. that's when they'll show up in the log, is after a full week has gone by. They'll update them into those stat correction logs. And then, for the sake of saying it, there could be, so we've seen these matchups where the stat correction comes in overnight, swings it to somebody winning versus somebody losing. Those type of stat corrections actually could go past the matchup. Since they're looking at them for a week, it is possible that there would be another stat correction on one of these matchups that could have swung it again. But after the matchup is finalized for the week, that's just how it is. And once it's finalized on Monday morning at like 3 or 4 in the morning, however that works, I could go back through and I could manually change these things. I could go and look and see like, okay, actually you did outscore this guy this week, but it credited him with the win and all of that stuff, and very tediously do the math to make sure that it's all accurate. And then I could manually update settings and standings and things like that. But once we start doing that, it starts to kind of change like the past in the league and how this is done. So in the spirit of the game, I just tend to, I never go back through and recalculate. If the league catches the stat corrections fast enough, I just roll with how the league does it. And I don't really ever try to play God with how all of this should be. And if you lost on Monday morning, you lost on Monday morning. I'm not going to go back on Friday or Saturday and be like, actually, now that the report's out, you should have won last week. That's going to be a headache for everybody involved. So I'm planning on just keeping it going how we've been doing it and basically staying out of it. But stat corrections can seem a little bit unclear sometimes, and they're not published right away what was taken away, but you can see an official list on NBA's website as well as within our app on ESPN. And you can always ask me questions. So, okay, that is my little aside. Again, if you guys have any more questions about that kind of stuff, you let me know. If you have any questions about acquisitions, you let me know. We went ahead, we talked about matchups this week. We gave some weekly awards. We talked about stat corrections, acquisitions. Let's look at the standings real quick, because we have some motion here finally. At the very top, we have Dakota 6-0. 6-week win streak, 99% chance of making the playoffs at this rate. He is outscoring the next closest team by almost 2,000 points. It's a solid 1,500 point lead over Eric and myself. I'm right there behind Eric, about 100 points short. So Dakota was the first to break 10,000 points. He's sitting at 11,314. Eric has 97.78. I have 96.56. And in fourth most points would be Grimes at a 2-4 record. Grimes has 96.42, and right behind him is CJ at 95.22, and Chance 94.50. Those are your only teams. Well, Daniel at 90.52. Those would be your 7 teams that are higher than 9,000. Scrolling down, Jorge is 88.87. Connor for real 83.51. 78.34 for Jesse, and the least amount of points for anybody is Ben Bowen. That's fried. Right as I said that, somebody on Instagram comments and says, "We love Ben." So good job, Ben. They love you out there. Keep trying. Jesse's got to pull his head out of his ass, man. He's got to get this shit together. He's got a 1% chance of making the playoffs at this rate. Where is it? 1%, Jesse. 1%. Not your year, bro. Not your year. You're gonna have to show. You have to show up, man. Most of the guys in this league don't think you know what you're doing. They don't know the days of you being a contending team. they just know Bozo Jesse and the outs. So look at the week ahead real quick. Nothing super crazy here. Of course, we never really know what's going to happen. I've got Connor for real this week after he picked up his first win. He's coming off a Manager of the Week award, and he would have beat the brakes off me if I was matched up with him this week. So I'm a little nervous. I'm looking at another couple weeks on Trae Young before he's healthy. I'm looking at, Stephon Castle still sitting in my IR for the next few days probably. So we'll see. Keontae George may suck, may be terrible. So I'm gonna hang in there, but I think Connor will probably beat me and pick up his second win. I'm probably looking at my third straight loss right now, and that's okay. I'll figure that out after that. But Cooper Flaggett will face off against Stone Cold Reeves Austin. I think Grimes is overdue for a win here. I think Daniel's overdue for a loss. Grimes would have beat Daniel had they matched up last week. Grimes has been on a tear, scoring a lot of points, outscoring most of the league, and I think he is far tougher than 2-4 makes you think that his team is. Also, I don't know that Daniel's team is as tough as 5-1 appears. He's had some very close matchups, kind of lucked out, won by a stat correction. Most of his matchups have been very, very close. But he didn't make any acquisitions last week, still beat Ben. We'll see. But I think Grimes will probably take the edge on this one. Back to back versus Wet Boy Nation. I don't see anything slowing down on Dakota's team here. I think he'll probably take a win against Wet Boy this week. Jacob's got to make sure he sets that lineup all week. That'll be very important to monitor. Team Velasquez versus Sengoons. Haven't seen a lot of effort from Team Velasquez other than just setting the lineup. I think Eric has been playing the wire pretty well. He's got some outs, but nothing super crazy other than his Pelicans are out. OG Anunoby's out. He'd love to see him back. He scooped up DeJounte Murray, which might have been too soon. He's still about 6 weeks away, probably. Eric will say 4 because that's what the app says, but this dude's dealing with baby mama drama, and he's coming back from a torn ACL or torn Achilles, so we'll see what that looks like. But I think that IR slot might be pretty valuable for Eric in the next few weeks, juggling Zion and Trey Murphy, which Trey Murphy's got an elbow. That's not good. Elbow issue. Zion's got a hamstring issue, which tends to linger. And he's got Anunoby sitting in here for, who knows. Says they don't have a timetable for him right now. He's also dealing with a hamstring. So Sengoons might need send hamstring help instead. We'll find out here. We'll also be looking for Chanks Chuchos versus Bruns Retirement Fund. Both these guys are looking to be over 500 here. They're both 3-3, both on a 2-game win streak. Chance hitting the wire earlier this morning already, picking up this kid from the Nets, Igor. This one's kind of a toss-up. I think this has potential to be a matchup of the week kind of thing. We've got both these guys are using the wire pretty well, monitoring their teams pretty well. CJ's been trying to trade. He's been trying to fleece everybody, trying to trade out this kid from Phoenix, but we'll see. Pretty good, maybe a good pickup in Jared McCain, but maybe not. Just depends on what the Sixers want to do. But we'll see. I think Chance will probably win this one. But I do think this will be close. I think this could be one we monitor for a matchup of the week type of situation. And then very lastly, we have the bottom of the barrel, Kobe One Ginobili versus Delusional Hoop Dreams. Man, I think it's wild, but Ben might win this one. Depends on what Jokic is doing. Jokic is probable with a wrist sprain. Jesse's team is hurt. He's got all the wrong guys hurt. Doesn't seem like he's trying. Again, Ben needs to kind of retool. If anybody else on Jesse's team performs well, I mean, the way Josh Hart has been playing, that could do a lot for him. This is a toss up. This really ought to be Jesse's first win of the season, but we will see. This is going to be a battle of no team management. But we'll see. Okay. The league chat's blowing up right now about this cat shooting somebody in Fishers. That's wild. I actually know the dude that shot the other dude, but different story for a different time. Be safe out there. Don't go arguing over vapes and Fishers, because they'll shoot you up here. Just don't go to Britain Tavern. Might run into Grimes. And if you run into Grimes in the wild, he wouldn't even know what to do. He'd be like, fuck, I'm not supposed to be here. I got something to do. I got a flight. I got to go. But, all right, enough of my bad jokes. Thanks for listening to me. Don't bet on birds. And I'm going to get a win this week. So watch out. All right, gang. Happy Monday. Let's go week 7.